Hey YouTube, this is Southern Prepper 1. Last video there was a great question. Actually two I'm going to do videos on. The first one is question by Reed and his last name, but I'm not going to give Reed's name. But if he wants to make a comment in the video, then he can say it was his. But Reed, thank you for the question. How do you plan or prep for SHTF scenario that can last 10 years or more? And what if SHTF situation is multi-generational? Your question got me thinking a lot, probably too much, because I've started doing some research. And it's actually a scary question, because a lot of preppers, where they tell you, I got my year's supply, I'm good. And that's good when you get started, have a goal of 1 month, 6 months, a year, and then look at it in a longer term. I look at it as an EMP event. It's going to take down all of our nice infrastructure that that makes our life very comfortable. If you go back and look at starvation, and that's what we'd be facing. Yes, we'd be facing marauders, we'd be facing disease, we'd be facing the lack of water, clean water, but basically it's going to come down to starvation, because we all need food. And starvation was very common in the colonists in the 17th century. In 1609 to 1610, that winter, 3/4 of the colonists in Virginia died from starvation or starvation type diseases that were brought on, but it was directly brought on from no food. Life expectancy in the 1800s was only 36 years. So starvation is nothing new. We just live, and our whole mindset is it would never happen to us, never happen in the United States, but it could, very much so. If food is not produced on a mass scale with modern chemicals, then starvation will happen. If we have wars and pestilence or any type of event that brings down a long-term SHTF, excuse me, we're going to be in trouble. So I plan for that. But he got me really thinking. It's like, oh man, I'm so inadequate right now. And if you want to find out how inadequate you are, just study farms of like 17, 18, 1900s and see what they had. But I'm going to show you a little bit why I think if you're concerned about it, you need to prepare for it. Yes, I know a lot of people are preparing for a month, for a hurricane, for 2 months, for 6 months, losing their job, and I understand that. But if you are the type that are preparing for the worst case event, then this video is for you. It really depends on what part of the country you are in. And everything is coming back to farming. Everything. I'm taking everything back to farming because it's just producing food. How can I keep from starving to death? Because starvation is real in this world, in third world countries. It's really real. If you go to Haiti right now, if you're a poor person and have no money, you will starve to death. There's no one there to make sure you don't. Your chances of starving is very high because there's so many people starving. What part of the country are you in? Are you up north? Are you in the south? Are you out west? That's going to determine a lot of your chances of survival. If you're way up north in Minnesota, it's going to be cold, so you better prepare for that cold. If you're down south, the heat is going to get you. Right now it doesn't get you because we live in air conditioning. But if you had no air conditioning and ask the people in Louisiana, now granted they have a million other variables affecting their life, like destroyed homes, no clean water, but it is an SHTF event for them. But there is hope at the end of the tunnel. There's people helping them, from Christian charities to secular charities to the Red Cross to the government to the state government. Help is coming. It's just slow, and I know it's slow for you. So that's going to affect you. Your location, in the sense, are you in the city? If you're in the city or the suburbs, your chances of surviving a multi-general SHTF event are probably slim to none. That's just the facts. It's because it goes back to farming. If you live in a little apartment and you have no property you can control, you're not going to be able to grow stuff. And the space you're going to need to sustain a family and a farm is huge. If you look at it, they got a place for the pigs, the chickens. They got a family kitchen garden right outside the door. Then they got a medicinal herb garden. Then they actually grow large amounts of crops, corn. You need space for this. You need space to get firewood. You need space to be able to hunt. So it's not that I'm down on you guys in the city. I'm definitely not. I'm just giving it reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. Multi-generation or a 10-year collapse, you're in some bit of trouble. Now you can always say, well, people always go to the city in a collapse. because that's where the jobs are. But if there's no jobs, it's going to be hard to get things back going, and it's going to take you making sure you don't starve to death, and that's farming, planting food. Let's look at modern houses. Now, during the early colonists, they were up north. It was very cold. There was really no insulation like we have now, so homes were very, very cold. The heat sources, if you study it out, life evolved around that fireplace. Now, if you were a little richer, you had a larger family, you might have multiple fireplaces in the house. But that means just more wood to cut. Let's look at modern houses. If you don't have ability to open your windows, and there's some places that windows don't open, especially if you're in a large apartment building in the city. Everything's climate control, heating and air. So if you can't even open your windows, you're not going to survive in that apartment building. Also, what about mold, humidity? In the South, humidity is terrible. But because of central heating and air, your house is protected from that humidity by the heating and air system. It removes that humidity, it puts it where it needs to be, and it helps with the mold situation. If you're in the South, or maybe in the North, there's a lot more basements up north, and you have a sump pump running because your basement's already very wet, or your crawl space is wet, so you have some type of mechanical means of ventilating, dehumidifier. If all that goes away, is your house going to be livable? Would it turn into mold city in the basement, mold city in your crawl space, and your house might not even be able to survive? Think about how they built houses. In the South, we built them with the porches. We built them with 10+ foot ceilings so that hot air in the summer can rise. We put windows all the way up so we can open it up and get a cross ventilation. If your house up north, you don't even have a wood stove or a fireplace or any means of heat. It might be, I got a backup propane heater, which will be great for 6 months, but eventually that is going to run out and you'll be back to square one. How am I going to heat? For me, it's how am I going to cool? But I need heat. It gets cold for three months out of the year. I could survive without it, but it'd still be miserable. So wood stove is awesome. Also, you might think, well, if it's 10 years or multi-generation, I got a tractor, man. I got lots of gas. That's going to last you a year or two, and eventually they'll run out. So go back to what the early farmers did. They used horses, they used mules, they used oxen to get the job done in the fields. Now, we have an advantage. If you know this is going to happen, or you worry about this is going to happen, prepare your fields now. Go ahead and clear your land. Have it de-stumped with a mini excavator. Get all that stuff done. Start fertilizing it. So even if you're not going to plant it right now, other than in grass or some type of cover crop, get it done. It will make the total difference of you surviving. If you don't get it done, you're not going to clear an acre of woods and de-stump it. The pioneers did it, yes, but modern man nowadays, a few of you will be able to do it, but most won't. So if you're worried about it, get it all done. Why we have the modern conveniences of heavy equipment. Look at how they laid out the farms. Very important. They needed space. They needed all kinds of things. They had smoke houses. Why? Because they didn't want to starve. So we need to go back to that. If it's multi-generational or if it's 10 years and we don't have modern conveniences of electricity, some of you have solar, which is awesome. Those modern conveniences that we have as backups will, for us, loosen the pain when the collapse happens. We'll be able to extend our quality of lifestyle a little bit further out, but eventually your solar system's going to die. Eventually something might break or somebody might damage it. So you're going to be back to, oh my gosh, my candles. It goes back to, can you make candles? The pioneers, and after they made candles, they knew how to take natural materials, make candles. So this is what we need to work on if you're worried about multi-generational. Fruit trees, perennials, blueberries, rhubarb, all this stuff that you need to be getting in, asparagus. This one question has motivated me right now beyond belief, because I look at myself and say, I am lacking. I am totally lacking. I look at it as my food storage is to get me where I can start producing enough, or at least augment it. So my food stores will go further and I'll be able to figure things out. if you're counting on the internet because it has all this good information how to survive, it might be down. Books, I recommend books. I need to go through my books and just stack them up in categories from security to herbs to gardening to chickens and then show you what I got, and then pick out one or two out of each of those stacks that you need to have. Even if you don't have chickens right now, you need to have a couple books on chickens. Granted, you might not be able to get chickens, but eventually down the road, if you've put enough back, you'll probably be able to barter for some chickens. My goal now for you, my desire now for you is to get chickens now, even if it's 3 or 4 or 5. You're going to learn. If you had 30 chickens or 3 chickens, you're going to learn about the same amount of information, and then you'll be able to expand your flock. But you got to learn now. Gardening. If you're not gardening now, give yourself a 1% chance of surviving a 10-year collapse. 1%. That's it. Because it takes a long time to learn all that stuff. I have failures all the time. My dad has setbacks, and he's probably a master gardener. You are going to have setbacks. You're going to have disease. You're going to have pests comes in. And if you don't know what to treat those pests or that disease with, that's naturally you can find around your property, and you don't have it in the cupboard from the store, you're going to die. I mean, just bottom line. Some of you are located along the coast, so fishing is going to be available to you. Some are next to big lakes. Fishing will be available. Another thing that we use to supplement our food, maple syrup up north. If you got the trees, you need to get everything you need to do. I did it before when I lived up in New York. So I have a few taps. It's probably changed. They've probably gotten so much more sophisticated. We just tap the tree and put a container underneath it. I've seen somewhere they tap the tree and run a hose. That's just awesome. So if you're up north, think about maple syrup, a grain mill. If you're near a river, there's a mill not far from here that uses the water in a water wheel. It's awesome. I'll do a video for you guys and show you. Why did communities settle around those areas? Because it had something to offer the community. A mill could be put in and we could harvest the energy off the river. Talk about families during a farm family. Every child worked. Even if they were really small, they weeded the garden, they got kindling wood. They did all kinds of stuff. In the summertime, they say that you worked, if you were on a farm back in 1800s, 1700s, you worked 14 hours a day during the summertime. Exactly when the sun rose, you were up. When the sun set, you stopped and cleaned up and ate and got ready for the next day. Huge amount of work. We have no work ethic in this country. So people are going to die by the millions. Maybe they'll smarten up, but probably not. They'll probably perish or turn to criminal activity to try to survive. And I guarantee you criminal activity with a bunch of hardcore preppers nearby is not going to be good. Because we're putting the effort into protecting our property. So being a criminal is hopefully going to be a very short life for you. Also, during the early years, a lot of guys try to get a cash crop that they could sell because they needed things. They needed things they could produce on their farm. So think about that. What can I produce in excess that I could trade or sell for things that I need that I can't produce here? We're not even talking about medical. Do you have an herb garden? Do you have the knowledge? I don't personally. I know a few people. One person's in my group that is an expert in this field. And it's getting back to community. It's getting back to having people in your group that know skills that you don't have. So it's very possible to survive. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of praying. It's going to take divine intervention from the Lord, that's for sure. Because we don't have the medical facilities. You could get one type of sickness and illness that's very treatable. You could go to the hospital and be out the next day with an outpatient surgery and you could be fine. In a worst case event, that tiny little problem that you had could be life-ending, literally life-ending. So it was a great question. You actually motivated me more than if you would have just told me, well, New York City got nuked yesterday, Dave, which would have been disastrous and terrible. But saying a multi-generational, and that comes up with, how about family members? You might have kids that have moved out that might be married or might have children. they're probably not set up as much as you are. If you're in your 50s or 60s, you're probably financially more secure than, you know, your 30-year-old son or your 30-year-old daughter with family. So they might be moving back in with you. You know, hopefully they're not clear across the country, but they might never make it back. But are you prepared? And you need them, because you are getting old. I will guarantee you, if I had to go work in the garden, hoe the garden, do work all day, my hands and fingers would be so sore. Carpal tunnel will set in. It'd be a disaster for me if I had to work 12, 14 hours a day. This right thumb right now is a little numb right now as we speak, just because of everything I do all day long. And I know when to stop. I know where, okay, I can work, and then I need to stop, so my fingers don't hurt, so I don't have other aches and pains in my old body. In a worst case event, it might not be, hey, I got to stop now. It might be, no, I have to push on because I have to harvest this, or I have to get this plants in. I have to get this wood split. The amount of wood, if you don't have a wood stove, I heat 99.9% with wood. So I have to have wood stacked here, there, there, and there, and there. And I can use the tractor to help harvest that wood, lift it up. I use my chainsaws. If I didn't have the chainsaws, we have two-man saws. We have some other big saws. It's all muscle power. It's all going to put further strain on me. It's also going to, I'll have to work on that and not be working on planting, or be working on security, or working on getting things better off for my family. So right now it's prepared. If you can put back a couple years supply of wood, put it back and just keep rotating it if you're burning it like I do. So much to talk about. I could go on all day, but you're probably bored already. Good question. Prepare as best you can. And let me give you one hint. Rice, oatmeal, and wheat. Easy to store, cheap to buy. If I were you and you were a serious prepper, I would put 3, 4, 5 year supply of this back or more. It's so cheap, it's so affordable. Actually, every day it's getting more expensive, so do it quickly. But 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this stuff was cheap. If I had a choice between buying another AR-15 or buying 5, 6, 7, 800 pounds of all these products, I would buy these products. I didn't even discuss animals and how to feed your animals. It goes on and on. I'm not going to bore you anymore. Thanks for watching.